Hello, everybody. Welcome back to that Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo alongside me. Another hectic weekend match for Milan, Matt. How are you doing? First of all, no need for big introductions here for this one.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting with Milan, obviously with the market and all the results. Obviously the football is the main focus, and obviously we have a lot to talk about with the Parma game and of course some upcoming fixtures. So
Yeah, again, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts on the Parma match. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow against Zagreb? You guys can give us a breakdown of that, or a prediction rather. But yeah, right into it with Milan, we knew that there was a must-win match, not only because of the opponent playing at home, because of the other
mm,
fixtures, which we highlighted prior to this match happening. We knew that someone with Napoli and Juve would be dropping points. We would hope, considering Milan's situation, the better team to drop points would be Juve, hoping Empoli could scratch and claw something against Bologna. And one of our own helped us in Lorenzo Colombo with his goal to get that draw. So they dropped two. Juve had the L, obviously. And then after the match that Milan played on Sunday, Fiorentina Lazio, a little bit of a surprise result considering form. Fiorentina grabbed the win. And yet another Milan player out on loan, Yassine Adli, helping Milan with that. So a 2-1 victory for them at the Olimpico. Probably would have preferred a draw on that one, but regardless, teams drop points. And Milan capitalized, just not in the way that we would have hoped. So once again, man, if you guys were here during the Banta years, there were a lot more afternoon games, it felt like, right? There aren't as many these days. Milan would always drop the points. And
mm,
anytime you would wake up in the morning, you'd get so pissed off and frustrated. It felt like it was always Udinese, these always lower half seeded teams within Serie A that Milan would just drop points against. And they would come out flat, lethargic. It was no different, right? In
mm.
this one. You could just immediately tell when Milan's not into it in terms of energy, dude. They're not there, and you worry about it. Lo and behold, Milan come out looking flat as shit in this one. Excuses with the Champions League, blah blah blah, dude. Like we always say, if you're healthy enough and you're starting for Milan, better see that effort. Left side really wasn't there from Teo and Leao, probably the most glaringly disappointing players. But your thoughts on like the energy coming out with this one? It's obviously the most noticeable thing, right?
It is, and obviously Conceição has been very vocal about what he's seen so far, and how unacceptable certain things are being, and he's typically commented on character. He's always used character, which I find interesting, right? Because I think obviously character, not having the formal definition, but really kind of basically more or less is a description of how one carries themselves, right? Their attitude and how they act in certain situations. And I find it interesting with this team that constantly they're slow starters. They don't always get off to the best starts. They always have to kind of wait for a sort of a punch to react, like big a counter punching team. This team feels like so far, and Pulisic has been saying this for a while too, right? Even in certain games, even when Fonseca was the coach, right, where he would say, we got to start games like this. If it was a good performance like against Real Madrid or some of these other
Yeah.
teams, they got to go, this is great, but we have to start games with the right mentality, with the right approach.
Yes.
And this team fails to do that consistently. I mean, every single result they've gotten has been they're trailing and then they have to come back. And that's a concern. I know that we've been talking that, we're focused strictly on the results, and they did get a result here. Obviously, they're like the cardiac kids, this team under Sergio Conceição. They always never make anything really easy. And this match was no different. Again, of course, a couple goals within the span of a few minutes. Milan somehow steal 3
Yeah.
points against Parma, a game that truthfully they should handle. I don't care about the Champions League obligations and things like that. There's enough quality in this team. There should be enough desire, passion, motivation in front of your home fans to give them something better than they saw. And I know the finish was this crazy thing, and it was one of those like, oh, you had to be there moments, and the fans got to see a victory. I get that, but big picture here, the fact that we've had Sergio Conceição as coach for about a month, And we've seen plenty of matches where we're consistently failing to react from the opening whistle. We're consistently failing to be assertive and dominant in a lot of these games. And that's concerning for me. And I think that we're really starting to see that despite all his character and his personality and some of the other players on this team, I think collectively this team really has a problem right now. There's something with this team. I don't know what it
Uh,
is. I don't know if it's tired legs. I don't know if it's they're still kind of trying to buy in and understand what Sergio wants from them. But the fact that we're getting just lethargic performances from like Teo and some of these key guys, and the performances are up and down, and we're not getting
yeah.
consistency, is concerning. You can tolerate that against certain opponents. You can tolerate that against the Champions League opposition, where all those matches are crucial. All of them feel high intensity, and you can get up for those games. But it's another when it's like, man, we're limping across the finish line to get favorable results
So
against Parma, who is by all accounts a relegation threatened team.
yeah. So like, okay, so here's a few things, right? And I mentioned this immediately when Sergio was hired. The way that Milan were winning games anyways under Fonseca,
Yeah,
you could even argue like to an extent Pioli last year
yeah,
too. It was like kind of one or the other last year with Milan. Here is just the way they win is just very rocky. So they have one win under Conceição where they never trailed. That was the match against Girona. Every single other game that they had, they went
yeah,
down first. Como, they go down. Diao scored that goal first. They went down 1-0. They come back to win. Juve, they were down. They never came back. Both Super Cup games, they were down in. They came back in. Milan again. Parma, two separate occasions. They were down. They came back. It's great to see mentality, but it's unsustainable in terms of winning and collecting
yeah.
points. Just like Juve is sort of the reverse. We've seen Juve, I believe the statistic was they have dropped, they've lost like 17 points worth of leads or around that this season. So Juve can't even protect themselves. Milan, you know, there's no way to even defend themselves. And my cousin had made this point, and I'll bring it up because I understand where he was coming from with this, but he was saying that the way Milan are unable to defend is because of their lack of scoring. And I agree with that to an extent.
Mhm.
If you have good enough finishing in these moments, the Parma match isn't really reflective of that. They didn't have that many great opportunities, which was the more frustrating thing. That you could argue like towards the tail end of the match. First half, they had nothing. They were outplayed. It was really sloppy. Players out of position, making stupid, silly yellow card fouls. I think Fofana had to pick up that yellow card. I forgot who turned over the ball. There was just a lot of moments within the match, and I had mentioned it in my video that I did yesterday. Transitionally, giving up these plays, and it happened the same exact goal that Milan had lost on against Parma when they conceded the second goal in the first match, right? You remember Leao had a terrible switch and the
Mhm.
tracking back on the defense was just terrible and everyone wanted to blame him. Chukwueze giving the ball away easily. Benacer had one that he basically telegraphed his pass at the top of the box, and Parma go back on a counterattack. And they're very
Yeah,
pacey with their wingers. And we were playing right into their hand. And playing like this, it's pathetic against sides like that because they're just elementary mistakes. Calabria, I thought, was like solid defensively, but offensively, it's inexcusable to see like some of the stuff that you're seeing. Who knows what the fight was with Conceição? Um, yeah, I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. Players are subpar. They're making stupid decisions. They're also integrating themselves into Conceição's system. We finally got a first look at Chukwueze under Conceição. Um, but you're right, and I think the energy thing could be played into a couple of things because we see someone like Pavlovic, Matt, who by all accounts, for the most part, played great, but the energy in which he brings is so noticeably different than the other players that are starting or are consistent starters within this
mhm,
side. I thought this was another positive performance from him. All around, you kind of, like I said, you got the full experience from him. Some silly fouls that were caused by his poor positioning, but his ability to carry the ball forward, winning fouls, winning that penalty. He had that headed goal taken away. There was a great cross from Chukwueze, but he was still positioned well enough to do so. He got the assist on the winner. This right here, I thought this was phenomenal by Pavlovic, and And I'm really happy to see this type of performance from him. What did you make of this? Obviously, it wasn't perfect.
No, but I mean, I think, look for a player that, as we spoke about in our one of our previous episodes when we were highlighting the transfer rumors surrounding him, he hasn't played a ton of minutes. I think he's played or somewhere around 1,000 in all competitions, which truthfully for a player that's adapting to a new league with a second coach, isn't that much. I don't think for me that's enough of a sample size to probably say, oh yeah, this guy's a flop or this guy needs to be moved on. We need to take the money and run. I was of the belief that, truthfully, defensively, we haven't been convincing for large parts of the season. There's been a revolving door for a reason. So
Any part of the season.
why can't Pavlovic get an opportunity? Why are we so hell-bent on pushing guys out the door that just came in here and then bringing a new guy in January where he has to immediately adjust to a new coach, to a new league, to new play style? And you're kind of back to square one, right, with a fresh project player. So the past two games for Pavlovic, I think, have been encouraging. I think, yes, you're going to take some bumps and bruises with his performances and his rawness to his game. We've highlighted that plenty of times. You obviously hope the good outweighs the bad. And in the past two games, it has. I mean, you kept the clean sheet against Girona, and Pavlovic, starts in that game, much like with Emerson Royale, who got injured. And Pavlovic gives you a really good performance in a match that, by all counts, is very crucial. These Champions League games are very crucial. And the fact that he, with all the news surrounding his future, which were pointing to him leaving at that point, Martino. There was Fenerbahce links. Like, it basically said, multiple reports were saying that was his last performance. That was his last match. And the two I've just seen from him, and I said this before, and I think Kush also agreed, I think he posted something on his channel as well, was we have 4 central defenders. Why are we so quick to rush him out the door? Mind you, we would have to go back into the market to get another central defender. And given that we've come up with a lot of competitions, we've come up with injuries of late, that's really risky. And I wouldn't put it past this management to make the bad decision and to move on from a central defender that, again, we haven't seen too much of. So unless the prices that you're getting back is outrageous and it's too good to pass up, for 15 million, I'd rather keep the player. You have him in system, have him in the building, see how he can get on with Sergio Conceição, because it seems as though that his personality also really does fit with a Conceição type. Aggressive. Yes, we'll make those sort of bull in the China store type, maybe, errors or sequences, but man, the fact that he's a presence on crosses, he's a presence in the box, he's someone who can throw his head around or throw his body around into challenges and can give you a little bit more physical, a little bit more of a bite to his game. I think that we have to keep him. I know that might sound premature, but I haven't seen enough truly to write this guy off just yet. And these past 2 performances have been very encouraging.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's exactly what I was saying. I was saying it during the last episode as well. I said it yesterday. Kush had that poll as well. I didn't get a chance to watch his latest video, but the poll came up. Like it's just stupid. And also it would just be another indictment of their dumb decisions to abandon a player 6 months after the fact, and not to mention the Kalulu side of things. So the guy that you essentially replace Kalulu with is already out the door as well for a lesser price. Like, it's just, we're talking about like good business for Milan, right? Which they love to boast about. They love to boast about, oh, look at our numbers. Like, oh, of course we had to make that sale for Tonali. Like we 4x'd his value or whatever they want to say, right? With Pavlovic, it's at a loss. You barely got to see him. Sure, there were some negatives, but there were even flashes too. And it reminded me of CDK a little bit, even though Pavlovic put together better performances than CDK had. But you could clearly see that there's a player in there. And we're not, and you're to your point too, he's a center back adapting to a new league. It's a huge jump from Austria to Italy. And then not only that, to AC Milan at his age. He had just turned 23. They signed him at 22. Do you guys realize like how young that is for a defender? You're talking about, and you know this, probably the position that takes the longest to develop within the sport itself. The best center back in the world, and Van Dijk, didn't really explode onto the scene until he was 26, 27. That says a lot about that stuff. Andrea Bartesaghi was also another player who is brilliant for Juve. He didn't really blossom until post 30. So to me, to kind of see this stuff where you have to get refined skills over the course of time, there is a player in there. And I think giving up on him when you clearly invested in him and saw
Mhm.
something in him says a lot, regardless of who Fonseca was
Yeah,
relative to Conceição. These managerial changes, the management is still there. Okay. So why are you hiring a manager if you deem doesn't fit your personnel, even though you were also interested in this manager before? Like
yeah,
you get where I'm getting at
yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's all over the place where they're connecting the dots for this kind of
I
stuff.
also want to
Yeah,
say too
go
to
for it.
that, it's an indictment and a reflection of their lack of player development. Now, if these are the players that you're scouting, and Pavlovic and Fofana and some of these other young players, right? Like that was kind of supposed to be the bread and butter, and that was supposed to be the identity of Milan's transfer policy, for a handful of years now, right? I know regime has changed, but generally speaking, you still feel though, as based on what their budget is, based on where they're spending as far as fees are concerned, they're
Whatever the
still in
budget
that
is.
market of trying to bring in players that are maybe overlooked, that are young, that haven't quite developed fully, and they're trying to utilize that to develop on themselves and to build them into starting quality and first team contributing players, right? So what does that say? If you bring in Pavlovic, who again second coach, six
Yeah.
months later you're moving on from him, and you really don't give him a really sustained amount of time to play consistently, what does that say about your trust and faith in player development as a team, as a club? And if that you're bringing in these guys and you feel that after 6 months there's nothing left for us to do, we're just going to sell him. You don't believe in your initial scouting then, because you're getting rid of him after 6 months, and you're proving to us that you don't trust that there is development to be had there. So I think that that's what kind of annoys me as well, is
Yeah,
that
of course. Yeah.
we had this sort of approach with Leao and a lot of these guys years ago, and I think we almost had to because of our situation and
Yeah,
where
yeah,
we're
yeah.
at in the
Absolutely.
project. But if you're going to bring in a 22, 23-year-old defender and you're going to have multiple coaches, I think that there has to be a level of, okay, well, we have to get the coach in there also that can develop some of these players, because not all these players are going to be finished products when you get them. Because frankly,
None of
as
them.
we've
None of them.
seen time and time again, Martino, this ownership and this management, they don't want to spend up for an established player. So
Yeah.
which one is it? If you don't want to spend up for an established player and you don't want to pay the money, but then you're going to also spend down for a player in that 18 to 20, 22 million range, you have to show that you can at least develop and that your transfer model works.
Yeah. And there was one other player that I kind of talk about that kind of falls in line with this, and we sort of seen the inconsistencies, but there's been more performances like this. Musa getting the assist for Reinders to tie the game in this one.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of falls in line with it, and I tweeted out about it. It's hard, and a lot of people did too, that it's hard to give up on Musa because you see these sort of performances and the glimpses and flashes of being great, who
Mm-hmm.
also is just 22 years of age. I think people also don't want to give him that benefit of the doubt because of his experience as a player. He's been playing since he's a teenager and slowly grown into this starter for the U.S. men's national team or a featured player there. The price point that you were just making. If Musa was a finished product, which I don't know why people would assume that he would be, guys, he wouldn't be on Milan's radar. He would have cost double.
Yeah.
Right? Like if Musa was so refined as a player that, where we pick apart his game, right, is usually in the final third. Decision making, ability to an extent. That's where we're like, okay, if Musa could fix that, we really have something there. We haven't seen that yet, but there's been some good signs and some
Mm-hmm.
consistency. I think, especially this year relative to last. Musa with this is the same sort of thing. You can't give up on this player just yet. And I think people are always with the expectations that you talk about because it's still Milan at the end of the day, regardless if you are this project sort of player like him, like Pavlovic, that you sort of expect them to hit the ground running when that just isn't fair to them. And that's just not the case. I thought this was another solid performance from Musa. I think you could see the trust for Conceição to him starting to develop with this. And this was a really nice ball. I have to admit. It was perfectly weighted, played it right into Reinders behind the defense, and Reinders finished his near post. So great to see another goalkeeper get
He
beat
did
near
have,
post
to
that
be
way,
fair though, he did have all the time in the world, and space was, I mean, one
Hey,
of us.
man. Yeah, of course.
I
But
under
just
I
nice to see.
understand that, but you see Reinders was holding his run and he was like, dude, pass the ball. There's all this space here.
Well,
But
hey, it's progress, right?
when
Because how many
I agree.
times do we see him have plenty of time and he still messes it up?
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
It's
I'm
but
not
you're
gonna
right
make
to
this
that
into a
extent.
yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
I'm not gonna try to make this into, a negative. I think, yeah, obviously, look, when he is playing, which he has been playing more in a double pivot, which I also find interesting too, because initially for Fonseca, it was Fofana Tijani as the double pivot, and it was a revolving door at the number 10. You didn't really know who to go for. And now it seems as though that Sergio likes Tijani forward. He likes the fact that he is someone that can maybe unlock the game in the final third. And he has the energy. He can track back. He can give you the numbers in the midfield if needed. So I think that Tijani, who has shown that he is going to be one of your workhorse players, he's going to run the most amongst most of the guys in your team, right? I think that's what the numbers even showed last year. This guy typically travels the farthest and runs the most in most matches. So I think that the way we set up is more of like a 4-3-3 hybrid where Tijani will drop back in, but in more offensive phases, he does push forward. So I think that is where the reliance on Musa comes into play. But for that goal to Tijani, you see he's advanced. He's looking to make runs into the box. And ultimately, that's where you're asking Musa to make the clinical passes. That's where you're asking Musa to do more than just be a runner and someone that clogs up space and that will defend. You're looking for him to make those final passes and to break lines and to unlock the game in that
Yeah.
sense. So a good performance by him. I think it's really important that we start to kind of have that conversation about, Musa and the like in this team, because, this is year 2 for Musa. And
Yeah.
you want to have a leash with them. You want to have a long leash and kind of give him that room and space to grow. But you also have seen quite a few matches from him and minutes from him to kind of have an understanding at like, okay, at some point we need to see that progression. We need to see that next step in his game. And I know it's not always easy with different coaches, but you get the point, right?
Yeah,
Where,
of course.
matches like this, he needs to start raising the bar. He needs to start having a safer floor where you're not in
Yeah.
some of these matches like we were last year against Lecce, or to the beginning of the 2023 season. I think it was towards the end of 2023 against Lecce, where he had a shocking performance.
Oh yeah, well he
You're
was
not
subbed in
really
on right
seeing
back. They
performances
blew the
like that from
lead.
him now, which is great. But I think, again, we've been playing him in several different roles. So that kind of does come
Yeah.
with the territory. I think now what Sergio is starting to see is this guy has a couple different qualities that maybe not finished, that can still translate in a double pivot, which allows you to play Tijani as a 10 and gives you more offensive numbers and quality in the final
Flexibility.
third, which where Milan needs it.
Yeah, I totally agree on your part. I think I texted you yesterday about it, or I texted a few people on how bad Milan's depth has been this year,
Yeah.
especially relative to last. When you get in production from Luka Jovic, Noah Okafor, regardless of like full performances, they were productive, right? They were at least scoring goals that you could hang your hat on. They're not really getting that from many areas. Like Tammy isn't even better or more productive than Jovic or Okafor from last year. So that kind of is reflective of that. And to your point about the floor, you're 100% right, because I was thinking of Salamakers, for example. Salamakers always had that safe floor. You knew at the very least he was going to give you great work rate, win the ball back a bunch. Musa does need to improve on that. And if he's not going to be great against the top sides in Serie A, at least have really good performances against teams like Parma.
Yeah.
I thought he had one with that. One more player I want to talk about, this guy. I was pretty impressed by this cameo here. I think safe to say, because there aren't many performances to go off of, this is probably his best feature as a professional. This is one of those players that we've slowly seen over the course of the year in terms of Futuro. Besides, like Jimenez was with Futuro, then came with a club. We saw Bartesaghi come and go. We saw that red card he was really unfortunate to pick up at the start of the season, so it really wasn't a big performance for him. He was just on the field for a bit. I thought this was a really good job from him. He did everything that you were expecting a young player to do. He's still so young at this point in time. This makes me feel a little bit easier about this, and I know it's just one performance. You can't take too much away from it and have to hope for some consistency. But what a huge deal it would be if this player becomes a reliable backup left back. I thought the crosses he provided within this one were threatening, if not good. And again, didn't seem too shaky. I know a lot of people like to highlight his lack of speed. How many fast fullbacks have we seen play for Milan, Matt? that don't end up doing anything. For me, I think it's just about reliability and putting in the work as a player. And I think he's done that and he's shown that within this cameo alone. I was impressed by him. I wanted to give him some flowers for this. What did you take away from his, or if you had any thoughts at all?
Yeah, I thought he was good. I mean, I think it's look, we've talked about this plenty of times, right? With not just him but other players, where it's not easy to come on mid game and have your name called and to
Yeah,
deliver and to produce, especially for a younger player. Um, and at halftime, we saw that Rafa and Teo were hooked, and obviously everyone ran with their own narratives and theories as to why this happened, which we obviously found out at the very end that there was no issues. I think it was Sergio trying to say, like, we have a lot of games coming up. We have a crucial one in the Champions League as well. We also need to kind of look to that as well. So that was basically Sergio going to and looking to his bench and saying, like, I'm trusting you guys. Like,
yeah,
let's change this game. And credit to him. It's not always easy because you think, you're down, you're not playing well. Well, I don't want to take my top two players off, right? I need this game. Every game matters. But the fact that he was saying, he's like, you guys aren't doing it for me right now, but I'm also trying to save you. Someone step up. I'm giving you an opportunity to do so. And I thought
yeah,
Bartesaghi did a really good job. I think that, he's a player that many people have talked about as a potential option for the center back position going forward. Because I think that's one of he can play there. He's a pretty big
yeah,
kid.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the fact that he's able to step into a left back role, he's able to just get his body in there, show us a little something. His work rate was good,
Yeah.
and obviously when that's a great thing for confidence. We saw what it meant for Jimenez to get that opportunity, and the fact that you're able to now maybe have something on the left back position to kind of rotate in with Teo. I'm not saying I'm ready to say bench Teo, give Bartesaghi the next start, but
Yeah,
in matches where look, you have a lot of fixtures coming up, and you're saying, hey, you know what, like Bartesaghi, like I'm giving you the opportunity here, and I do think Sergio is actually going to do that. Not right away, but I think there's going to come a point in time very soon where he's going to give Bartesaghi that trust and say, I'm going to give you the opportunity to get a start here. Show me something similar to what we've seen with
yeah.
Jimenez and maybe some of these other younger players. So definitely
They have
what we
some of
want to
those
see.
pictures.
We want to see a lot of these younger players from Milan Futuro in the future coming up and making an impact. We've seen Camarda, we've seen Jimenez. Last year we saw Chaka Traore get opportunities in the league and cup play.
So Liberali for a
Liberali,
moment.
right? So I want to see Bartesaghi get an opportunity, and that's a bonus too because again, he is a pretty big physical player as far as his stature is concerned. So maybe if he can't give you always burn at the left back position, maybe he is someone that can grow and to be a more versatile option. Now you have something there that is in house. So a good performance from him.
Yeah, you mentioned it on potential stuff like that. Obviously, the derby is going to be this weekend. Dinamo Zagreb tomorrow, but there's Roma Coppa Italia midweek next week, and then it goes to Empoli, Verona, Torino, Lazio, Lecce, Como. I think in that stretch of games
There's
that you
something
had
there.
mentioned,
Yeah,
there is that opportunity there. We could see it also for Jimenez. Who knows? You could see him go back to Terracciano within that, but I
yeah,
think he really wanted to get a better look at that because it looks like Terracciano, if he's going to be playing a position, it'd probably be right back at this point because that is who the backup option is at this rate. With Calabria, you'll likely see Terracciano start tomorrow actually against Zagreb. So he'll get that opportunity there. It was just nice to see a Futuro player actually have an elongated shift where he was able to build off of something.
yeah. Not just
I would
15
say
minutes.
that's arguably the best besides Jimenez this year because Camarda, small doses, Liberali, I thought looked okay when he got the start, but not much you could really go off of within that
Yeah,
one. Big one tomorrow for Milan. We are in to the next phase of the Champions League, but what phase will it be exactly? Milan needs to at least get a draw against Dinamo Zagreb to advance to the round of 16 by finishing top 8 in the league phase season of the Champions League. This would be massive for so many reasons, Matt. One, scheduling, fixtures wise, you get a lot more leniency with it. You're not going to be playing an extra 2 games, which would be huge with rotation and Milan trying to make this climb back into the top 4 and 5. It would be huge for Italy's coefficient, who they share with England 1 and 2 right now, to get a 5th Champions League spot. So that's huge for Italy in itself. We'll see if Atalanta and Inter can get into that top 8 as well. It would be massive for Italy to have something like that. Juve are likely to advance to the next round. I don't think they're officially in, but they might be. So for the 5 teams that Italy had fielded, will be advancing into the next stages of the Champions League. We'll see how far they go there. Again, Davide Calabria suspended for this one. The probable 11s have not really come out with that. I wouldn't be surprised to see Fofana obviously start again. Could see Benacer as well with that, because Fofana is suspended for the derby against Inter. So that could see him get more minutes with that. Leao and Teo are starting. Conceição had confirmed that. That's also why they got some of their rest as well. So it would be big and a benefit for Milan. We'll see what happens in the right wing position. Pulisic potentially getting that start. We'll see. He is just coming back from an injury. We have seen him feature. He featured against Girona off the bench. Obviously started against Parma. We'll see with that. Center backs, I think, could be up in the air. Could be Gambia with Pavlovic, no Chow. So it's either Tomori or Pavlovic, I would say. Tediciano would have to start at the right back position. Just get a result, and you're in a great position. Hopefully Milan are able to kill off this game. Zagreb is a difficult place to play in the Champions League.
Yeah.
We obviously saw Milan 2 years ago on their run to the semifinals pick up that win there in that group with Chelsea as well. I'm feeling positive about it. I am. Get a result here. Milan have looked good in the Champions League. We'll see if we're able to finish our chances, which is a big question mark. Maybe Alvaro Morata gets a boost here, Matt. He is now back with his wife after a lot of relationship struggles. So we're hoping for rejuvenated Morata with that. So congratulations.
Like a new signing, right?
It is like a new signing, who they also had mentioned, by the way. Props to you. Benacer is like a new signing for Milan. They're not pursuing another midfielder in the transfer market. Gotta love that. But yes, that kind of looks like where it's at. Reinders at the 10. So your thoughts on this, expectations, just get a result, right? I'm not even going to get too upset if they get a draw, because you know what? They're in the top 8. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Sergio approaches this game. We do have the derby on the weekend, which obviously is huge. It's already baked in. It's an important game. Regardless of the fact that Sergio did win the Super Cup in dramatic fashion over them, the fact that it is a big Serie A game, it's a match that Milan obviously needs. They're all important in getting top 4, top 5, whatever you want to call it. So he might be a little bit safe in this game, right? He may not risk too much, knowing the fact that some of the recent performances have not been too great. You could see the noticeable lethargic way about this team, whether it be, just tired legs or just not really up for it. But I think that, he's going to put together a strong 11. It's a Champions League game. There's still something at stake. So I do think you're right on with the midfield. Fofana will play because he is out against Inter, which is very unfortunate. Tijani at the number 10. I do think Pulisic will play. I think actually Pulisic starts, and I think maybe he comes off, and maybe you see a little bit of a different rotation. Maybe you see Chukwueze come off.
I think Chuk gets. I think
something like that. I think will happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that look, regardless, I think that you have to get something from this game. I think we don't have any reason to doubt that we will, because I think, the contrary to what we've seen in league play, we've actually been pretty steady in the Champions League. We won 5 straight games, and even some of the games preceding Sergio Conceição. The Bayer Leverkusen game wasn't a dominant game for them. They didn't destroy us. We actually competed in the second half of that game. The Liverpool game, we were outclassed, aside from the goal from Pulisic. So I think that we don't have any reason to come on here and say, well, they're going to do this, they're going to blow it. No, I have confidence that we'll get the result that we need, whether it be a win or draw tomorrow. So that's really ultimately all I care about at this point, is advancing, getting the benefits of everything you just mentioned regarding Champions League revenues, that sure thing into the knockout stage, final 16. And of course, it's a great opportunity, if we can get there, for a lot of these younger players that haven't really tasted knockout football in the Champions League. So a lot to play for. I think we do get the result. Do you want to do prediction? I guess we could do prediction.
Yeah, go for it, man.
I actually think we're going to get I think it's going to be, I'm going with 2 results in my head right now, because I saw the game that Milan had away. I think, who was it to? Was it Sparta Bratislava? Where we were up a guy and we almost lost control of that game.
3-2, yeah.
I have a sense that, again, we're going into a difficult environment, and it's not going to be as easy as simply saying, well, Milan are Milan, and they're in pretty good Champions League form, so we're going to run the show. I think we get a draw here. I think it's 1-1, Milan get the job done, and they get the result they need.
And Zagreb is still has the capability. If they were to win this game, they could get to the
So
knockout
they
stage.
have a ton to play for.
They are 26th, right behind number 25 Manchester City.
They need something too, so they're going to be
I
hungry.
think it'll be a 2-1 Milan win. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think Milan have a lot to play for here. European football is better for our style, and how we are suited within this. I think this one is going to be absolutely really difficult, but I think our individual quality is going to shine through with this. I think getting more players like Chukwueze being able to come off the bench for these is a big plus. We see Morata or Atami do something as well. Yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling kind of positive with this, and the approach is just too massive. And by the way, I should say, if Milan were to finish in the top 8, don't forget on how important money is that. How important that money is for Milan, guys. Like truthfully, but
Unless they
that's pretty
spend it.
much it with that.
If they're not going
Yeah.
to spend it, though, truthfully.
Who knows? Who knows? A lot of conflicting reports with the Jimenez stuff. We'll keep you posted on that. We'll try and maybe get an episode out on Friday for you guys. But this one is really wrapping up here. Again, we appreciate all the support. You guys have been giving us so much love, and we give it right back to you guys. Again, check out Football Cush's channel, Coast to Coast with Fabio and Gio, Milan Weekly Podcast, MLM Podcast, me Marco's channel, Old Hard Rossonero, Sempre Milan's podcast as well. If I'm drawing a blank and forgetting a podcast, I apologize. If not, thank you guys once again for the support. You go and follow us here at That Milan Pod, That Milan Podcast everywhere, Instagram. If you still have TikTok, you can go and follow the old videos over there for the time being. Again, myself at Martino Puccia everywhere. I'm at _Santangelo everywhere, and at AC Milan Bros, where him and his brother Nick run that account. Other than that, any final statement, Santangelo?
Yeah, I mean, I think if obviously things develop on the transfer front, we'll maybe put out a quick video, or Martino will put out a quick, little reel or whatever. But yeah, hopefully within the next couple of days we can do something. Kyle Walker is in the building. I think he might.
He was there. His face looked hilarious during the game.
He might play reportedly. He might actually start against Inter, which is something I read. I don't know how true that is, but
yeah, no idea.
So anything on the transfer front, we will keep you guys posted with some content updates.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you later.